simple to set up, you know, nothing too crazy. And if I want to do, make his arm move, I can always place a puppet pin at the shoulder, at the elbow, and at his wrist, and move that. Although that's really kind of rubbery, and so I can always go up here and add a starch pin. Right up here, actually, to just below the elbow. And you'll see this mesh get a lot denser in there, so that now when I move this, I get a little more natural movement out of it. So, but for the puppet pins, just remember, I mean, it's got, all of the pins do a specific thing. The first one, the puppet position pin, you can simply move the position of elements, to move the position of the pins. The second one's that starch pin, and it's just going to make the mesh denser so that it stiffens the movement at that point. The bend pin is a pin that'll drop in there, and you can't move the position of it, but you can rotate that section and you can scale that section. And then advanced pin tool does all three: position, scale, and rotation. And then the overlap tool allows you to, if you've got objects within a character that overlap each other, you know, like one end overlaps the other end, like you take a ribbon and you, or you take a straight piece of something and you loop it around so that it's like a ribbon that overlaps. The overlap tool will allow you to specify what section of the object overlaps the other, so you kind of get control over that. So that's puppet pin, and I kind of do this because I'm going to go back to this, but so we've got that. Nice simple movements, like I said. We'll just kind of pose stuff that way. So good for background characters and that kind of thing. So the second one was this guy in blue, and if I play him through, this is the demo I did, just sort of did a quick walk cycle. It's not a great walk cycle, but it works. So this guy was set up for a standard FK rig, in which, if I go back over here and go ahead, actually let's take a look at him real quick. And we've got so here's this guy in blue. If I open him up, you see every part to his body is on a separate layer. This is the kind of thing we need to set up for an FK rig. The thing is, whether we're going to do FK or IK, we've still got to set up the same FK rig. It's required for both processes. So, and we just, you know, name everything very clearly and hope for the best. So this character only has one arm and one leg because we animated just the leg, and then we duplicate that and offset it to create the back leg. So, but that's how we set up, you know, an IK character or an FK character. So we can come back over here, and I'm just going to re-import him. Let's cancel. Let's do this again. Import file. Guy in blue. Composition retain layer sizes. And then Here's all the parts. And in order to set this up, all we need to do is, so remember what matters with a rig like this is where the bend points are, and that's going to equate to our anchor points, and then how we have objects parented together. And it actually, having all this stuff set up, named well, helps out, especially if we use Duick Angela. It helps out with the auto rigging. Having things clearly labeled that it can recognize makes that a smoother process. But if I select all these objects, all these shapes, I'll tap transparency on my keyboard and drop my transparency to 50 so that, or something like that, so that I can see where all these joints overlap. I'm then just going to use the anchor point tool or the pan behind tool, select objects, and move my center point to where they should rotate. So head should rotate right behind the chin. The neck will rotate at the collarbone line, so below the collar of the shirt. My upper arm here should rotate up at the shoulder. My forearm will rotate right here at the elbow. And the reason I do the 50% transparency is it shows me where those overlap, so I can just drop that point right in the middle there. And the same thing with the hand. And we do that for the leg and everything else. So, like I said, this is for a walk cycle. So, like the shoe here will go right below the bottom edge of the shoe. And I only have one leg to set up. If I had a front view of my character, I'd need to actually do this for all 4 limbs, a little more setup. But this should be okay for what we're doing. I think that falls right about there, if I remember. I can't see very well because I left the black in. And then the upper body will actually bend at the waist and our hips. I'm just going to move that center point forward a little bit. So all of my center points are set up pretty much that easy. And the thing to remember about setting up a rig like this is that the hips always drive everything. Where the hips go, the rest of the body goes. So while the legs will move and carry the hips along, if the hips move left, the upper body moves left because it's all connected to it. And then the arms are connected to the upper body, the neck and the neck's connected to the upper body, the head to the neck. Everything, is in a sequential kind of an order. So once we've set all of our center points, then we need to, first thing I'm going to do is change this back to 100% and tap U on my keyboard to collapse everything. So now we need to actually parent together all of the appropriate elements. And I'm just going to, usually I start with an arm and a leg, but I think for this right at the moment, I'm just going to kind of start with the hips. So if, actually let me rename this. This is my neck. So if I start with my hips, the upper body gets paired to the hips. So I'll grab the body, come over here to parent and link, and I can either use the drop-down menu or I can use this little pick whip right here. So if I click on the pick whip and drag the pick whip for the body, and I drag and highlight the hips, that'll parent my body to the hips. And then if I work my way up, the neck will parent to the body and the head to the neck. So I'll grab the neck, parent to the body, I'll grab the head, I'll parent to the neck. I grabbed the wrong thing. Neck to the body. All right, there we go. Head to the neck. And then, so basically wherever my body goes, or where my hips go, right now, the body and the head will go with. If I rotate the body, the head and neck will go with it. So that's the hierarchy we're setting up. So I've got all that done. Let's do the legs. The upper leg, parents to the hip. The lower leg, parents to the upper leg. And the foot, parents to the lower leg. And then the upper arm will parent to the body. The lower arm will parent to the upper arm, and the hand will parent to the lower arm. And after all that, let's just fit. So now, if I grab my hips, everything goes, but I could grab my upper leg, rotate that, grab my shin, rotate that, and I can drop my toe a little bit. And that's how FK works. Basically, I'm rotating, like I said, every single joint. So that's a quick review of how we set up an FK rig. Put this back here. Lock it down. All right. So I can animate this just fine. And that's what I use for the walk cycle that I did. But what if we want to do IK from this point forward? And actually, I'm not going to use this guy to do my IK. I'm going to use a different one that's a little simpler for a simpler setup. But before I go and do all that, if I go take a look at, like I mentioned, RX Laboratorio is the website. That's who has Duick Angela. There's all sorts of good tutorials here to cover this. Like I said, there's a lot more that I can really go through. I mean, but I can do some simple stuff. So, and you don't need a subscription for the tutorials. They've got tutorials that are free on the site. There's also some really good ones on YouTube. So, but that's where you go to get Duick Angela. So I'm going to go back here, and I've already got it installed, but it looks something like this. It's got a bunch of different panels and options all the way through. What I'm going to work with are the pins as well as the auto rigging feature here. So, but before I do that, let's just import a file. And I think this is over here, if I remember right. Let's look at Fall 24. Let's see. Oh. Character. That's right. I forgot. I labeled all my folders so I could find it again. So I've got this wire guy. Let's do Duick Dance. Select that, open it, and if I open this, Here's an example of a character I set up and rigged out already. So I created this robot kind of a guy, but he's already rigged up. And what a successful rig actually allows us to do is it gives us all of these little controllers. So if I grab his hips here and move them side by side, you see that I don't have to move every single joint in order to get movement. I can pull his hips down, but basically it's a series of bones that it actually adds to all the shapes. And then at these controller points, it actually draws connections, or it shows up as wires between controller points and major anchors. So compared to the guy I just rigged up, this, all I gotta do is grab his ankle and move his leg. To move the head, grab this, kind of move it back and forth a little bit. The neck kind of goes with it. If I grab the rib cage, so it gives me some okay kinds of controls. This takes a while to set up, so I'm not actually going to set this up. But if I can set up a little animation where he, kind of dances. So a very simple example, but you get the idea. You kind of see the difference now between IK and FK and why one is better than the other. So, or maybe not even necessarily better, just has more flexibility, I guess. So that's an example of a Duke Angela IK rig. Using bones in the whole setup. The one I'm going to do here for a demo actually isn't going to use bones. I'm actually going to go back and use puppet pins. And those pins are going to define joints, and Duke Angela is going to know what to do with those. So I'm going to go and import another item. Let's see, I need to go over here. And I think I forgot to put this on Brightspace, but that's all right. So, got this guy, Pinky, that I made earlier today. Layers retain layer sizes, create composition. And if I open this up, here's the guy I've got. It's just a simple body with two limbs. Doesn't get much simpler than that. But I wanted something that was purposely very simple so we could easily see what was going to happen and how this was going to work. So the way this is going to work is that I'm actually going to use puppet pins to set positions on the arms. And I'm actually just going to set the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. And then those are the only puppet pins I'm going to set. I'm going to use Duke Angela to actually animate the arms, but then I can also pair the pins that it makes to the head so that when I move the head, the body moves around. So it'll make more sense probably whenever I do it, but in a nutshell, that's sort of the story. So let's fit. And I'm going to solo the left arm to start with. So if I just click on this solo button for the left arm, that'll hide everything else. I've got my puppet pin, and I'm just going to set the joint up here, something that roughly is the elbow, and then the hand. And it creates that mesh. I'm going to go ahead and grab the right arm since I'm doing it, and I want to do this one as well. So if I grab this, and now I'll grab my puppet pin, I can do the same thing here. And then not do anything to the body. So let's start with the left arm. So I've actually got Duke Angela docked in here, and I'm actually going to just use, this tab sets up bone structures, and based upon your character, it's got some pre-built rigs. So there's like a hominid, which will give me arms, legs, spine, hair, that kind of thing. Just a bunch of pre-built kinds of structures for setting up and rigging. I'm just going to use the links and constraints tab for right now because I want to work with pins and then auto rigging. So I've got this guy, and if I recall right, I need to go make sure I select the puppet engine or puppet effect, and then go back over here, and I'm just going to say add pins, and let's see what it does. So you see it added pins. It replaced the After Effects position pins with pins of its own design, and you know I can kind of move this around. So not the way I want to yet, but I can do that. So when I set pins like this up, I've still got to do the parenting kind of a thing that I did before with my FK rig. So if you notice, whenever I ran that add pins, it actually added 3 items to my timeline, and these are controllers. So here's the wrist. It needs to be parented to the elbow pin, and then the elbow pin needs to be parented to the shoulder pin. There we go. And I'm just going to select all 3 of those now and run auto rig. Cross my fingers. And now when I move just that controller that it puts at the end, you can see the wire that connects the 2 end ones. I get full kind of fluid control over that appendage. So I've got that one, and I'm going to go do the same thing to the other one. So I've already got the pins there. Let's come back down here and my right arm, open it up, select that puppet engine, and then I'm going to go back up here to my Duke Angela tab, add pins, and it added all those in. And I'll just go back. So here's the 3 new controllers that it put in. So I'll just grab, and I'm going to parent these all up too. So the wrist pin goes to the forearm pin goes to the shoulder pin. And then I'll just select all 3 of those, and I want to do the auto rig again. So now this one's set up. So that's pretty cool. And now, let's close all this up. I am going to parent. The only pins or controllers here I didn't parent anything are the shoulder controllers. So let's bring everything back into view. So I'm going to grab the shoulder controller for the right arm. I'm going to parent it to the body. And I'm going to grab the shoulder controller for the left arm. I'm going to parent that to the body. And now it gets even more fun. I'm going to move this center point. So now when I move the head, the legs all kind of move. And that's the difference between FK and IK, is the kind of total control over the movement. I forgot to parent my eyes to the body, so let's go ahead and do that real fast. Parent the eyes to the body, and the pupils of the eyes are going to get parented to the eyes themselves. And then I'm going to do one other thing here, and I'm actually going to use the eyes as a mask for the pupil. So I'm going to come here to my track mat, and I'm just going to set the eyes as a mask. But I don't want the eyes to disappear. I'm going to bring them back. So now what that allows me to do is, as I move this guy around, he can look around in a slightly more convincing kind of a way. So we'll animate the eyes that way. So like I said, it's a pretty nice, simple little character and simple rig that I can then animate. So why don't we do that? So I can do the arms individually, but I think what I'm going to do is, let's grab the body and position. Set a keyframe for its position there. And then I'm just going to, let's see, how do I want this to move? Oops. Let's come over to about, I got to shorten up my timeline here. I should have made shorter compositions. All right, so I'll bring my playhead over to about 15 frames. We'll start there. And I'm just going to kind of pull him this way. And he kind of stretches a little bit, but for this character, I think that's cool. I think that's what I want. So he moves this way, and I'm going to look at his eyes. His eyes are going to look the same direction. So I'll set position for the pupils as well. And maybe I'll do this, have it sort of look down a little bit, in which case maybe the body should drop a little bit as well. So this movement is like that. And then I'm just going to let him sit there for half a second. Just copy this and paste it. Copy this, paste it, and then I'm going to kind of come up here, bring his head up, grab his eyes, so he looks over, comes up, let him sit there for just a little bit. Copy, paste, and then really quickly, he's going to do this, and his eyes are going to follow. So the movement is basically that. Sort of simple animation. So I'm just going to ease all of these, I think. could do here is after he does that, let him slowly return to his copy that, paste it, copy that and paste it. Stay there for just a bit. Copy, paste, copy, paste. And there, let's try that. So a simple little animation. Very few, I mean, compared to a regular FK rig though, I'm animating very few points overall. So these kind of anchor, but I mean, I could move these as well. Make them do like a little sumo wrestler kind of a thing, bouncing, kind of lunging back and forth, any kind of number of other things. But that's the kind of thing that IK will do for us. So, anyway, that is what IK looks like for character rigging and animation. Pretty flexible though. I mean, like I said, this used puppet pins to identify all the joints and the movement points. But if I use that FK rig, you know, I get something more like this, where all the bones are in place, so to speak, and we can make them move a little more realistically as well. So, but that's IK in a nutshell. I thought about rigging this guy up again, but I think the last time I did it, it took, and I've got a video on that. I can put the video up, but it took close to an hour to put him together, I think, as I recall, to get him all right. So it takes a little bit of time, but the results are good if you set them all up right. The one thing I don't have set here is, if you notice, whenever I move, I can theoretically break his arm. See how I doubled it back over his body? We can also set constraints on all of his joints so that they can only move just so far before then. And the nice thing about constraints is that if I set a constraint on the shoulder that says that this is the furthest it can move, once it hits this point, then the body starts to move. So the motions overall are much more realistic, all in all. But it does create a very long and hefty composition. Which is why I've hidden some of them so we don't see everything, but it's also why we solo objects as well. So it's a very, very big list. So, like I said, under resources, here's the add-on or the plug-in for it. Feel free to download it, and if once I finish going over these this next assignment, if you want to load it up, I can step you through loading it up. It's fairly easy. There's 3 different ways to do it. I recommend doing the second method, which is actually loaded in through After Effects. Other stuff requires like requires terminal access and stuff like that. So, but feel free to download it and we can take a look at it. So,